This is Turd Flinging Monkey reporting for TFM News, and I'm going to be reading from an article I wrote for Shedding the Ego. I'll post a link in the description. It is not a secret that most criminals were raised by single mothers. In fact, right-wing female author Ann Coulter has compiled some very scary statistics for her 2009 book, Guilty: Liberal Victims and Their Assault on America. Even if you reject the political right or consider yourself apolitical, Coulter's research does not disappoint. And even if you despise her, the old saying regarding a broken clock being right twice a day seems particularly applicable. Here's an extremely telling quote from the book. 70% of inmates in state juvenile detention centers serving long-term sentences were raised by single mothers. 72% of juvenile murderers and 60% of rapists come from single mother homes. 70% of teenage births, dropouts, suicides, runaways, juvenile delinquents, and child murderers involve children raised by single mothers. Girls raised without fathers are more sexually promiscuous and more likely to end up divorced. A 1990 study from the Progressive Policy Institute showed that after controlling for single motherhood, the difference between black and white crime rates disappeared. The point where MGTOW and traditionalists part ways isn't in regards to the statistics, but the origin of and solutions to the problem at hand. Traditionalists like Ann Coulter and the political right promote marriage as the solution. Their reasoning is that a nuclear family with both parents present will eliminate the criminal tendencies in these young men. MGTOW tend to have a different perspective, and that's what I want to explore in this article. Let me present my hypothesis up front. I believe that once the child is no longer a toddler, a woman serves no purpose in the raising and nurturing of the child. It is not the nuclear family that provides the structure and authority that children, especially boys, need, but the man himself. What do women do aside from light housework that has almost been entirely automated, such as washing dishes and clothes? Being raised by a single mother myself and hearing the stories of others, I can attest that as soon as children begin walking and manipulating objects with their hands, mothers began assigning these tasks to the children in the form of chores, thus eliminating nearly all of their domestic duties. In the traditionalist utopia of the modern nuclear family, the man earns all the money, the children do all the chores, and the mother just loafs around spending the man's money. Thanks but no thanks. Now, this isn't to say that a man can raise a child alone. After all, if he were home all day playing with his kids, how would the bills get paid? Obviously, a child requires several caregivers, but mothers in marriage are not required. Nannies, tutors, coaches, and other adult professionals can easily fill these roles. The mother's so-called nurturing is replaceable, while the father's role as a leader and an authority is not. Case in point, a mother in Columbus, Georgia called the police on her 10-year-old son because she couldn't control him. The boy was being, quote, rude and disrespectful, not listening, talking back, not doing his schoolwork, according to the mother. The mother had the cops pretend to arrest the young boy and terrified him, as several photos show. Near the end of the article, it states that the stunt had the desirable effect. The mother reports that her son has showed improvement since the fake arrest and that he is doing great in class and receiving wonderful reports from his teacher. However, at the end of the article, a spokesman for the Columbia Police Department states that the cops involved in the stunt did not have the approval of their supervisors, and the assistant police chief stated that the police aren't there to pretend to arrest people. Now, to fully understand this story, we must back up and take a longer view. At no point in this article does it mention that the mother in question is single, but it is obvious that she is, and that is precisely why she called the police to discipline her son. Women are naturally weaker than men, and as young boys begin puberty, they no longer physically fear their mothers. All those ass whoopings they received as small children won't scare them once they become teenagers and tower over their mothers. At this point, lacking any natural authority, the mother loses all control over her sons, and they run a high risk of turning to crime, as statistics show. This is the paradox of the modern, strong, independent woman that don't need no man. They claim that they don't need men, but they are wholly reliant on men, but they just don't admit it. At least 90% of single mothers are on welfare, and the problem is so bad that there are several welfare programs created in America specifically for single mothers, such as TAMF and WIC. In fact, women on average are twice as likely to be on welfare as men, which means statistically men only use about 30% of welfare dollars while women use 70%. Interestingly, in the US and UK, men are 70% of taxpayers while women are 30%. So men are paying 70% of the taxes while receiving 30% of the benefits, while women are paying 30% of the taxes and receiving 70% of the benefits. In this way, these single mothers have used the government to replace the provision that a husband and father would provide. Instead of a single man working and providing for her, all men collectively work and provide for her. This is not independence for women, and is an especially raw deal for men. When a man is forced to pay alimony, it is usually capped at around 20 to 25% of the man's net income. However, the welfare state represents well over half of government spending, meaning that if there was no welfare state, your taxes could be cut in half. This means that every male taxpayer is effectively paying twice the rate of alimony in taxes in order to support all these single mothers that need a man like a fish needs a bicycle. Let us put the money transfer aspect aside, though, and reconsider what this Georgia mom did using the police. A man's utility to a woman goes far beyond the income he provides. If income was all that a man was good for, the welfare state would be producing well-adjusted and productive young men instead of criminals. A man is needed to raise young children into productive adults, especially boys. I will concede that women are biologically suited to taking care of infants and perhaps even toddlers, but past the age of 5 years old or so, children need a man to raise them. The reasons for this need should be obvious based on the story of the mother calling the cops to discipline her son. While a mother lacks natural authority based on her physical inferiority, she must rely on the threat of proxy violence to control men, even young 10-year-old men. The problem with this approach is manifold. Primarily, there are not enough police officers out there to be an authority figure for all the sons of these single mothers. There are 9.9 million single mothers in the U.S. living with children younger than 18 as of 2014. Meanwhile, there are only 1.1 million police officers across the entire country. Even if we split the single mother population in half and arbitrarily say that we should focus only on single mothers raising boys, that's 4.5 single mothers for every single police officer. The need is too great, the police are too few, but in all honesty, even if there were more officers, raising fatherless children is not their job in the first place. Let me close by offering a solution, as I feel it's always better to propose a solution when pointing out a problem rather than to simply complain about the situation. My solution is that in the case of a divorce or a separated couple wherein the mother and father do not live together, to take children away from the mother and give the father primary custody once the children are old enough to go to school. The mothers are free to be as nurturing as they want from the time the child is born until the child reaches the age of 5. However, once that child is old enough to learn, they need an adult that they could learn from, and that means they need their fathers. Mothers can raise babies into children, but only fathers can raise children into adults. This is TFM signing off.